I'm Madison Reed, 31 years old, and I built a digital marketing company that pulls in over $10 million a year, all without ever setting foot in college. My husband Aaron stands by me through everything. But his mother Diane never stopped looking at me like I didn't belong. The night she told me to get out of my own house in front of a table full of guests, I realized something I should have understood years ago. For all her manners and degrees, that woman never saw me as anything more than a waitress who married up. And the way I left the table that night, that's where everything started to change. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stay quiet just to keep the peace. I grew up in Springfield, Ohio. My parents didn't have much, but they had grit. My dad worked the same job at a plastics plant for over 30 years, came home every night with sore hands and oil on his shirt. Mom picked up every shift she could, waiting tables at a diner off the highway. Neither of them complained much. They just kept going even when we were one flat tire away from not paying rent. School never made much sense to me. Not because I didn't care, I just couldn't sit still in a desk while someone read from a textbook. My mind wandered, always chasing ideas. I'd sketch flyers for pretend businesses in the back of my notebooks or daydream ways to help real ones down the block. By senior year, my guidance counselor stopped asking where I was applying. Everyone knew college wasn't happening. After graduation, I took whatever jobs I could get, retail office assistant, food service. It wasn't until I started waiting tables at Lorenzo's, an Italian place near the University Hospital, that things began to shift. That's where I met Aaron. He was a second-year med student sitting with classmates after a long exam. While the others barely glanced at me, he looked me in the eye when he ordered and actually asked how my night was going. A week later, he came back, sat in my section, kept coming back. Over time, our conversations went from quick to easy, then personal. We had our first date at a coffee shop near campus. He told me his mom was a history professor, his dad a cardiac surgeon. I told him my parents had never taken a vacation. 6 months later, I met Diane and Richard Reed in their home outside Hartford, Connecticut. Their house smelled like polished wood and expensive candles. Diane greeted me with a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. She was polite, but there was a way she looked me over that made it clear she'd already made up her mind. During dinner, Aaron mentioned I was thinking of starting my own business. Diane set down her glass and said, "How ambitious. What kind of business can you run without a degree these days?" Her tone was mild. Her meaning wasn't. Aaron proposed not long after. I was 24. He was 26. We had a small wedding, my choice. Diane called it sensible given the mixed crowd. She always had a way of sounding kind while carving you down. While Aaron finished med school, I built my company from a folding table in our one-bedroom apartment. I charged next to nothing in the beginning, just to prove I could deliver. Some nights I taught myself everything from scratch marketing funnels, ad strategy, automation tools, on a $300 laptop that overheated if you ran more than 3 tabs. Aaron supported me without question. He'd come home exhausted from a 14-hour shift and still ask about my clients. But Diane. During visits, she'd slide brochures for adult education programs across the kitchen table. She introduced me as Aaron's wife, never by name, never with mention of my work. And when I landed my first 6-figure contract, she called it a lucky break. The bigger my business got, the smaller I tried to make it around her, as if that might soften her disapproval, but nothing ever did. And then came the night of the family dinner, the one where everything cracked wide open. The night of the dinner started out quiet. I'd planned everything myself, menu, music, seating, down to the lemon wedges for the iced tea. Aaron's cousins were flying in from Boston. One was a corporate attorney, the other a neuroscientist, both married to people just as accomplished. Diane called them our East Coast achievers. I just wanted the night to go smoothly. She showed up 3 hours early holding a grocery bag and a smile that didn't last long. "Oh, you're using those plates," she said, peering at my set table. "I thought we'd bring out the formal china. And these napkins. They're fine, I suppose, just not what William and Rebecca are used to." I nodded and let her start rearranging. She moved silverware, swapped wine bottles, changed the background music from jazz to string quartets. By the time the guests rang the doorbell, I was holding myself together with a thread. The cousins were polite, if a little stiff. They talked about their children's boarding schools, a ski trip to Switzerland, a private fundraiser they'd attended in D.C. I smiled, nodded, kept the glasses full. I wasn't surprised Diane stayed close to them during cocktails, introducing Aaron as our Dr. Reed and me, as Madison, his wife. She runs a little online business. Dinner was served. Roasted salmon, herbed potatoes, grilled asparagus. I'd made everything myself. Halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I ignored it, but it buzzed again. Diane caught my eye. "Is something more important than our family dinner, Madison?" she asked lightly. "No, just work notifications," I said, silencing it. Rebecca leaned forward. "What kind of work do you do?" I opened my mouth to explain, but Diane got there first. She helps small businesses with their Facebook pages. Social media things. There was a pause at the table. I breathed in slowly. "I actually run a digital marketing agency," I said. "We develop strategy software and analytics for companies across the U.S. and overseas. We've got 50 full-time employees and just crossed $10 million in annual revenue." The room quieted. For a moment, even Diane didn't speak. Then Rebecca's husband said, "That's impressive. Did you study marketing in college?" Before I could respond, Diane let out a soft laugh. "Madison didn't go to college. She's self-taught." She said it like it was something I ought to be ashamed of. The conversation shifted quickly this time to the value of education and what degrees open doors. Diane nodded along with every point. A strong academic foundation, she said, teaches more than facts. It builds character. Aaron tried to change the subject twice. Diane brought it back each time. Then his phone rang. An emergency at the hospital. He whispered apologies, grabbed his coat, and kissed my cheek. "I'll be back as soon as I can," he said. As soon as the door closed behind him, Diane took a long sip of her wine. Her tone didn't change. If anything, it became smoother. "In my day," she said, "young women didn't prioritize phones over dinner guests. But then again, in my day, we didn't confuse computers for real work." I stood up slowly. "Excuse me," I said. "I need to check something real quick." In the hallway, I opened my phone. Our operations director had messaged 3 times a system crash affecting our client dashboards urgent. I texted back, gave the go-ahead for emergency protocol, and confirmed my availability for follow-up. Less than 2 minutes. That's all it took. When I walked back into the dining room, Diane turned toward me. "You've always been more interested in that computer than in building real skills," she said, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Aaron does his best to support your little hobby, but honestly, what kind of example are you setting? No education, no credentials, and you pretend to be part of this family." The cousins froze. Rebecca stared down at her plate. Nobody moved. Diane leaned forward, her voice clipped and cold. "You're uneducated and jobless. Get out!" I didn't flinch. I placed my napkin beside my plate, stood up, and looked her directly in the eyes. "Okay." I heard my chair scrape softly against the floor as I pushed it back. That sound, small as it was, felt like the loudest thing in the room. Diane blinked. For a second she looked unsure, then her chin lifted. "Madison." She didn't mean Rebecca's voice started. "It's all right," I said. She was clear. I turned and walked upstairs. I didn't rush. I opened the closet, pulled out my weekender, and started packing. Just the basics. A few outfits, my laptop, cables, work files. From the hallway, I could still hear Diane talking something about loyalty and disappointment, something about how Aaron didn't know what he was getting into. I texted Aaron. Diane told me to leave. I'm going to Chicago. I'm okay. I'll explain later. His reply came right away. When I'm coming home. No stay. You're needed there. I need space. I zipped my bag and looked around the bedroom. Same framed photo from our honeymoon. Same candle on the nightstand. Same blanket I'd ordered during a sale last winter. Nothing had changed, but I had. I walked downstairs with my suitcase in hand. The table was quieter now. A few murmured excuses. No one made eye contact. "You're actually leaving?" Diane asked. "You asked me to," I said. "I'm respecting that." William stood up. "Maybe we should—" "Please finish your dinner," I said gently. "It's already made." I grabbed my coat and purse, called for a car. While I waited by the door, Diane walked over. "This is unnecessary drama," she said. "You're embarrassing yourself." "I've been patient," I told her, "and quiet. But I won't stay where I'm not welcome." She crossed her arms. "Where will you even go? I have options. You'll run back to your parents, I suppose." I didn't answer. My phone buzzed. Car was outside. "Please lock up when everyone's done," I said. "Good night." Behind me, I heard Rebecca whisper, "Should someone go after her?" And Diane's voice steady as ever. "She'll be back." Where else would she go? The air outside was cool, quiet. I stepped into the waiting car and gave the driver the airport address. 2 hours later, I boarded a flight to Chicago alone. I called Aaron from the gate. His voice was tight. "Are you really leaving? I need to," I said. "And I think you know why." He didn't argue. The plane took off just past midnight. And for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for her next comment. I wasn't shrinking myself to fit a room that never wanted me in it. I was on my way to somewhere I'd built by myself. The flight landed in Chicago just after 2 in the morning. The terminal was quiet, and the air outside was still holding on to the last bit of summer. I gave the driver the address of the lakefront condo, the one Aaron and I had bought a year earlier but barely used. He called it a vacation place. I'd started thinking of it as something else. The doorman recognized me. He held the elevator and wished me a good night. Inside the apartment, I set my suitcase down and didn't turn on the lights. I just stood there watching the city through the windows. It was still the kind of quiet that feels like a clean page. I didn't unpack. I didn't cry. I sat down on the edge of the couch and stayed there until the sun started to rise. At 6:45, I made coffee and walked into the small office we'd set up facing the lake. My laptop powered on. Notifications rolled in. By 7, I was on my first call with the operations team. "You're not in Seattle," one of my directors said, noticing the shift in my background. "Just working out of the Chicago place for a little while," I replied. "How's the server issue?" We moved straight into logistics, data restoration, client communication, next steps. No one asked questions. For the rest of the morning, I was exactly who I've always been, Madison, the CEO. Not Aaron's wife, not Diane's target, just me. Around 10, Aaron called. "I just got home," he said. His voice was quiet. "She's still here." I stopped typing. "She spent the night," he explained. "Said it was too late to drive home after dinner. When I walked in, she was making coffee like nothing happened." I waited. I asked her why my wife was in Chicago instead of sleeping in our bed. "She said you were being overly sensitive, that it was just a misunderstanding. She claims she was only being honest about your career. She called me jobless Aaron." "I know. I told her what you make. I told her how many people you employ. You should have seen her face." There was a long pause. "It won't change anything I said. She's decided who I am. She doesn't get to decide anymore." I didn't respond right away. "I'm not asking you to pick sides," I said finally. "But I need space. I can't figure this out with her showing up at our house every other day. I understand." "I'm not leaving you," I added, "but I need time away from her." The line was quiet for a few seconds. "I miss you," he said. "I miss you too." That first day set the pattern. I worked full hours, sometimes more. I walked along the lake in the afternoons, ordered food from the places Aaron and I used to try when we visited. We talked every night, just the two of us, without interruptions or commentary from the sidelines. The distance helped. So did the silence. In the next 2 weeks, I signed 3 new contracts, brought on 10 new staff members, met with 2 advisors about scouting physical office space in Seattle. Without the constant disruptions and tension, I had room to think, room to lead. Meanwhile, Diane still expected me to return. "She keeps asking when you're coming home," Aaron said during one call. "Like she's waiting for you to admit this was all a dramatic overreaction. And what have you told her?" I told her she's the one who needs to apologize, and she says she has nothing to be sorry for. That didn't surprise me. By the 3rd week, Aaron's tone started to shift. He was exhausted working full rotations at the hospital and fielding questions from his mother in every spare moment. One night after a particularly long day, he told me he'd had enough. "I told her today," he said, "you're not coming back until she makes it right. And until then, she's not welcome in the house. She said I'm choosing you over her." He added, "I didn't ask you to do that." "I know, but I am." He sounded firm, tired but clear. "Come to Chicago this weekend," I suggested. "You've got 3 days off. Let's take a breath." There was a pause. "I'll book a flight tonight." He arrived Friday afternoon. I met him in the lobby. That whole weekend we didn't talk about Diane once. We walked along Navy Pier, got deep dish from the place we used to love, slept late, laughed, let the city hold us for a while. On Sunday morning we sat on the balcony with coffee wrapped in a blanket. "I can't go back to how things were," I said. "I can't have her walking into our house questioning my work, second-guessing everything I do." "I've been thinking about that," Aaron replied. "What if we open the Seattle headquarters sooner than we planned? You'd have a place to work outside the house. That helps," I said, "but it doesn't fix her." "Then we make it clear," he said. "She calls before coming over. No more unannounced visits. No more comments about your education. No more dismissing your career. If she can't respect that she doesn't come," I didn't say anything for a moment. "She'll test you. I'll hold the line." He reached for my hand. "You're my partner, Madison. If she can't treat you with respect, she doesn't get to be part of our daily lives." When he returned to Seattle Monday evening, Diane was waiting, in the driveway, with a casserole dish and a list of things she wanted to talk through. He didn't let her in. He told her our boundaries. She cried, said she was being pushed aside, called me dramatic, then cold, then silent. He didn't bend. That week I got a message from Business Insider. They were running a profile series on women in tech and had heard about my company. After consulting with my team, I agreed to the interview. 6 weeks later, the article came out. From Waitress to CEO, How Madison Reed Built a $10 million Digital Marketing Firm Without a Degree. It included a photo of me in the Chicago office, outlined our growth, our software tools, our global team. Later that morning, Aaron called me. "She saw it," he said. "Your mother-in-law saw the article." I waited. She said, 10 million. That can't be right. And I told her, yes, it is. She didn't know what to say. There was a pause. She asked me if you really built all of that without a degree. I said nothing. She didn't argue. He added, she just got real quiet. That afternoon my phone rang. It was her number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello, Madison," she said. Her voice was softer than usual. "I hope I'm not interrupting your work." "I have a few minutes," I said. "I saw the article." "Yes, they did a nice piece. 10 million, 50 employees. I had no idea. I didn't speak. I may have misjudged certain things," she said. "Ethan mentioned you're scouting office space in Seattle." I am. Well, she said, that's very impressive. I wonder if we might talk when you return. Clear the air. It wasn't an apology, but it was the first time she'd ever admitted she might have been wrong. I'll be back next week, I said. We can talk then. Good. I'll wait to hear from you. After we hung up, I sat still for a long time. The woman who once told me I was jobless and unworthy now wanted to meet. Not because she'd changed who she was, but because she couldn't deny what I'd built. I flew back to Seattle on a Wednesday, mid-morning flight, quiet plane. I stared out the window for most of it, watching the clouds move underneath us. This time I wasn't arriving to smooth things over or pretend everything was fine. I was coming back on my own terms. Aaron met me at the gate. The second he spotted me, he smiled one of those tired, grateful smiles you only see on someone who's been holding their breath for a while. He didn't say much, just pulled me in close and held on. "She's not at the house," he said on the drive home. I told her we needed time before anything else. The house looked just as I left it. But it didn't feel the same. I walked through the rooms slowly, like I was reintroducing myself to them. The kitchen was spotless. My office had fresh flowers on the desk. A note sat beside my computer written in Aaron's handwriting, "Welcome home. They missed you too." We spent that first night in. No talk about meetings or boundaries. We ordered Thai food from our favorite place, sat out on the back deck, and just listened to the breeze. The quiet wasn't heavy this time. It felt earned. The next morning, I met with 2 real estate agents. I toured 3 downtown buildings, each one promising in its own way. But one stood out, a red brick building with tall windows and a wide-open floor plan. The top floor had a view of the water and enough space to grow into. As soon as I walked through the door, I knew. This one, I told the agent, start the paperwork. Later that afternoon, I texted Diane, "I'm back in Seattle. Available to meet tomorrow if that still works." Her reply came quickly. "Tomorrow at 2. The cafe near your house." That works. I told Aaron I'd go alone. Whatever this becomes, I said it needs to start with just her and me. He nodded. "Call me if you need anything." I arrived a few minutes early and picked a corner table. Diane walked in right on time, wearing a navy coat and carrying a structured purse that matched. Her hair was pulled back tighter than usual. She nodded once as she sat down. "You look well," she said. "Chicago agreed with you." "It did," I said. Gave me some room to think. We ordered coffee. Silence settled between us. She didn't fill it, not at first. Just unfolded her napkin and set it in her lap. "Ethan tells me you found a space for your company." "Yes, downtown. It's exactly what we needed." She nodded once. "That's wonderful." There was a pause. Then she took a breath. "Madison, I've been thinking a lot about the dinner and what I said. It was unkind and inappropriate." She didn't look up. I waited. I didn't have a clear picture of what you actually do. I made assumptions based on my lack of a college degree, I said. She glanced at me, then gave a short nod. "Yes." She folded her hands together like she was bracing for something. "In academia, credentials matter. They're how we're taught to recognize potential. It's not an excuse. Just context." I took a sip of coffee before answering. "I'm not asking for approval, but if we're going to have any kind of relationship, I do need respect." She blinked once, looked at me for a long moment. "You're right," she said. "I haven't been respectful, and that was wrong of me." There was a shift in her voice, then smaller but more certain. "I don't want to lose Ethan, and I understand now that you're not going anywhere. So, yes, I need to change how I see things. It wasn't emotional, it wasn't dramatic, but it was honest. I'm willing to start fresh," I said, "if you are." We sat for another hour, talked about our work, mine hers. She asked questions about how I hire people, what our software does. I asked about her early teaching years, what it was like being one of the few women in her department back then. We didn't become friends in that hour, but something shifted. The walls didn't come down completely, but a window opened. As we stood to leave, she paused beside the table. "Would you and Aaron like to come to my place next weekend for dinner?" she asked, then added with the smallest smile, "I promise not to reorganize your career." I gave a short laugh. We'd like that. That night I told Aaron how it went. "It's a beginning," I said, "not a full transformation, but it's something." He reached for my hand. "That's all I ever wanted. I'm not doing it just for her," I said. "I'm doing it for me too." We were finding new ground, not because I finally won her over, but because I stopped needing to. The following Saturday, Aaron and I went to Diane's for dinner. Her condo was tidy, warm, filled with framed photos of Ethan through the years, first-grade class pictures, college graduation, medical school residency. There wasn't a single photo of us as a couple, but I didn't mention it. She'd made pot roast. The table was already set. Candles, cloth napkins, real silver. We sat down without ceremony, and for the first half hour, it was almost easy. We talked about Aaron's schedule, new office updates, a book Diane had just finished. She asked questions about my company, real ones, not performative. At one point, she said, "Ethan mentioned your team's mostly remote. That must take a lot of coordination." "It does," I said. "We use a blend of software and structured check-ins, but we're transitioning some people to hybrid roles now that we're opening the headquarters downtown." She nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense." After dessert, while Aaron was in the kitchen helping with dishes, Diane stayed behind at the table with me. "I've been meaning to ask," she said, "how do you hire people when they don't have degrees? What do you base it on?" Her tone wasn't condescending. "Just curious. We look at portfolios, completed projects, skill tests sometimes. A resume can tell you where someone's been, but it doesn't always show what they can do." She nodded slowly. "Interesting. In my department, we often assumed if someone struggled academically, they'd struggle professionally. But that's not always true, is it?" "No," I said. "Sometimes it just means they learn differently." Later that night, Aaron and I walked home. The streets were quiet, a soft wind rolling through the trees. He slipped his hand into mine. "I think she's trying," he said. "I think so too." The next few weeks passed in steady rhythm. Construction began on the new office. Our company finalized a new contract with a national retailer. I spent time interviewing candidates, reviewing vendor quotes, ordering furniture. Aaron cut back on overnight shifts. He'd started pushing back with hospital administration, making space for a life that didn't revolve solely around work. Diane stayed consistent. She called before visiting. She brought over soup when Aaron caught a cold, but left without lingering. She never stepped into my office unless invited. One afternoon, I was reviewing a final floor plan with our architect when Aaron came into the room. "She just texted," he said. "Wants to know if we can meet at her place tonight. She said she has something to ask." We agreed to stop by after dinner. When we arrived, Diane had tea already poured. She didn't sit right away. "I read your company's spotlight in the Seattle Business Journal," she said, walking over to the kitchen counter. "The part about mentorship and scholarships. That struck me." I glanced at Aaron. He looked as surprised as I felt. "I've been thinking," Diane continued. "I'd like to help if that's something you'd consider." I set my cup down. "In what way?" She took a breath. "Advisory support, academic partnerships. I still have connections in university leadership. You're building something with real reach, Madison. I'd like to contribute." It was quiet for a moment. Aaron leaned forward slightly. "You want to be involved in the foundation? If you'll have me," she said. "I know I can't undo the past, but I'd like to be part of what you're building now." Her voice didn't waver. She stood still, waiting, not assuming. "I think that could be valuable," I said. We're working with several entrepreneurs who've been overlooked because of how they look on paper. Your insight could help us connect with schools trying to broaden their definition of readiness." She nodded but didn't smile, just sat down across from me. That night back home, Aaron wrapped his arms around me in the kitchen. Whatever happens from here, he said, "Thank you for giving her this chance. I didn't do it for her. I know." We stood like that for a while, quiet, steady. In the months that followed, our lives kept moving forward. The headquarters opened in the spring. We hosted a ribbon-cutting ceremony. My parents flew in from Ohio, smiling and wide-eyed as they toured the space. Our team, many meeting in person for the first time, filled the rooms with laughter and shared stories. Diane attended too. She stood near the back of the crowd, watching, listening. When I walked past, she touched my arm lightly. "This is remarkable," she said. "You've built something that matters." I nodded. "Thank you." Later that week, I finalized the paperwork for the foundation. Scholarships, mentorship, early funding for entrepreneurs without formal credentials. When I told Diane, she asked if we could talk over dinner. At the restaurant over grilled salmon and green beans, she said, "Have you ever considered working with community colleges? Some of their students are brilliant, but they're overlooked by traditional employers." I nodded. "That's part of the plan." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Let me know how I can help." For once, there was no pretense, no performance, just willingness. We didn't erase what had happened, but something new was forming, and I was no longer waiting for her to see my worth. I had drawn the line, and this time it held. We were 3 months into the new office lease when the call came in. A writer from Business Insider had been researching fast-growing marketing firms and found our name mentioned in a few industry circles. She asked if I'd be open to an interview for their Women in Tech Without a Degree series. I ran it by our comms team, and we agreed. The timing was right. The growth had been steady, the numbers solid. We'd crossed $12 million in annual revenue, with expansion teams now operating out of 3 states. The interview itself was straightforward. They sent a photographer to the Seattle office, took some shots of our staff meetings and our innovation wall. We talked about the early years, about hiring people based on what they could do, not where they studied. The piece was scheduled to run the first week of October. I didn't think about Diane seeing it, but she did. Aaron called me the morning it went live. "She just called," he said. "She saw the article, read the whole thing." I waited. She asked me if it was accurate. The revenue, the client list, the employee count, and I told her yes, every bit of it. What did she say? She got quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I didn't realize she'd built all of that." The article was everywhere that week. Clients forwarded it. Former colleagues emailed congratulations. We got interview requests from 2 more outlets. Internally, our team passed it around in group chat, proud to see their names and work acknowledged. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was her number. I picked up. "Madison," she said. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I can talk. I saw the article." A pause. $10 million in revenue. Well, I had no idea. It's been growing quickly the last few years. Ethan said you started the company from your apartment. That's true? Yes. 1 laptop and a folding table. She was quiet for a few seconds. Then I think I misjudged what your business was and what you've accomplished. I didn't fill the silence. "If you have time next week," she added, "I'd like to take you to lunch, not to rehash things, just to talk, to listen." "All right," I said. "You can let me know when." She messaged later that night with a reservation for the following Wednesday. We met at a restaurant downtown not far from the new office. She arrived 10 minutes early, already seated at a corner table. I noticed she was holding a printed copy of the article. "I've read this twice now," she said. "I underlined a few things." I smiled faintly. You mentioned here that you hire people based on performance instead of credentials, that you found some of your best staff through unconventional channels. That's true. Many of them wouldn't have passed a traditional screen, but they're excellent at what they do. I used to believe that higher education was the only reliable indicator of capability. Now I'm not so sure. The server arrived to take our order. When they left, she looked across the table. I've spent decades in academia, teaching, researching, mentoring. I still believe in the power of education, but I'm beginning to understand it's not the only path to impact. We talked through lunch. She asked about our upcoming expansion, how we were handling growth. I shared updates about the Scholarship Foundation. You really started that to support non-traditional entrepreneurs. Yes. Some people just need the right tools and someone to believe in them. She folded her napkin slowly. I've been thinking, if you're building out the Foundation's advisory board, I'd like to be considered. I could help connect you with institutions that are open to alternative learning models. There's more of them now than you'd think. I studied her face. She wasn't performing. She meant it. I'll talk to the team, I said. We'd welcome your insight. Aaron was waiting when I got home. How was it? She came prepared, I said. Listened more than she talked. He sat down beside me. Do you think she's changing? I think she's trying to. That weekend we hosted a soft launch event at the new office. Clients, staff, family. My parents flew in from Ohio. Diane came too. She walked the halls, slowly stopping at the innovation wall. It held framed snapshots of our early campaigns, a timeline of company milestones, quotes from clients and staff. When I joined her, she said, "This is impressive. You've built something substantial, something that will last." She didn't say it with surprise, just with recognition. I nodded. Later that night, I received an email from her. Just one line, I was wrong about you. Thank you for proving me wrong. It was the first time she'd ever put that into words. I didn't forward it. I didn't quote it to Aaron. I just saved it. A year earlier, I'd been told to leave my own home because I didn't fit a narrow mold. Now I was standing in a space I had built, surrounded by people I had chosen. Reading an apology I never thought would come. And I wasn't waiting for anyone to tell me I belonged. 3 months after Diane sent the email, we held the official grand opening of our company's headquarters. We'd invited clients, investors, press contacts, and friends. The main office had been transformed for the event lights strung along the ceiling beams, tall arrangements of white flowers, tables of appetizers and drinks. A banner hung in the entryway that read, "Innovation built from the ground up." My parents flew in from Springfield. I showed them around personally, introducing them to team leads and giving them a tour of the new design suite. My dad, usually quiet in crowds, kept his hands tucked behind his back as he walked slowly past the framed photos on the innovation wall. Diane arrived about an hour into the event. She wore navy slacks and a soft gray blazer, a bit more casual than her usual choices. She didn't seek me out right away. She stood in the back of the room listening as one of our directors walked guests through a demo of our newest software tool. Eventually, I saw her reading the milestones posted on the wall. Each frame marked a chapter: our first client contract, our first team retreat, the Chicago expansion. She paused at the one that showed a photo of me sitting on a couch in our old apartment, working from a laptop with folders stacked around me. When I stepped over, she turned. "This is quite remarkable," she said. "You've built something substantial, Madison, something that will last." She didn't say it with a smile or a compliment's tone. She said it the way one might say, "This is the truth, and I see it now." I nodded. That weekend, I finalized the launch of our foundation, something I'd been planning since my first months in Chicago. We called it Open Path. It would offer funding, mentorship, and tools to aspiring business owners who didn't have degrees, connections, or traditional resources. 15 recipients were accepted in the first round. We held a quiet reception at the office, giving them a tour and introducing them to mentors. Each one had a different story: single parents, veterans, people who had aged out of foster care. One woman used to manage a bakery, but had never been able to secure capital to start her own. A man in his 40s had been teaching himself coding at the library and now had a working prototype for a digital accessibility tool. Diane attended the reception. She didn't speak much, but she listened closely. After the event ended, I found her in the conference room, standing beside the refreshment table. "I've been thinking about what success really means," she said. "For a long time, I measured it by academic output, degrees, articles, citations. I still believe those things have value. But watching these people today, I see something different. I see drive and value that doesn't come from a transcript." She looked at me steady. "I'd like to help however I can. I have relationships with several universities that are beginning to rethink admissions. Maybe there's a partnership model worth exploring." "We're open to it," I said. Diane joined the Foundation's advisory board the following month. She helped shape our mentorship model, bringing in guest speakers from outside the business world, historians, educators, community leaders. The transformation wasn't instant, and it wasn't perfect. There were still moments, holidays, dinners, when she said something that made me pause. Once she asked Erin if we planned to send our future kids to private school. When I answered instead, she blinked like she'd forgotten I'd be part of that decision. But overall, something had changed. She called before dropping by. She never commented on my work hours. She brought books she thought I'd enjoy. One evening, as we cleaned up after a board meeting, she handed me a folder of articles she'd printed. "These are about educational equity," she said. "They reminded me of the work you're doing." Erin noticed the shift, too. "She's different with you," he said. "Not just careful. She's learning. Maybe we both are." By fall, the Foundation was supporting 28 entrepreneurs. We'd partnered with 2 community colleges and a local tech incubator. One of our earliest recipients, a former mechanic, had just launched a prototype for a mobile diagnostic app. Diane called me after the demo. "He reminds me of my father," she said. "Didn't finish high school, but could rebuild a transmission blindfolded." Her voice caught slightly. "I spent so long trying to protect Ethan from anything that didn't look like what I understood. I didn't see that you were offering him a different kind of strength." I let the silence settle. "I see it now," she said. We ended the call. I sat for a while looking out my office window. The skyline was dark except for the glow of windows and the taller buildings. Ours among them. A year earlier, I'd been dismissed in my own home. Now I was leading something that didn't just belong to me. It belonged to the people who'd been overlooked, the ones still waiting for someone to believe in their vision. I no longer needed Diane to accept me, but she did. And not because I'd softened myself to fit, but because I hadn't. A year after that dinner, the one where Diane told me to get out, we stood together at the Open Path Fall Showcase. The room was filled with people from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, mentors, university partners, and supporters. There was music playing softly in the background, trays of food passed between small conversations, and laughter rising now and then from one of the project tables. Each recipient had a display of their work, everything from design prototypes to working apps and printed pitch decks. They stood beside their booths with quiet pride, talking about things they once believed they'd never get the chance to create. Aaron stood with me near the entrance, his arm around my back, his eyes scanning the room like he couldn't quite believe how far things had come. Diane joined us a few minutes later. She was wearing a deep blue scarf, the same color as our foundation's banner. She greeted several of the board members by name, stopped to speak with 2 of our scholarship recipients, and then made her way over. "You've done something important here," she said softly, "and I'm proud to be part of it." I nodded. There was nothing more to say. She knew, and I knew, and that was enough. Later that night, after the last chair had been folded and the lights dimmed, Aaron and I walked home in the quiet. We passed the little bookstore where we used to browse on rainy Sundays, and the diner where we'd first celebrated signing our first long-term client. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't left that night?" he asked. "All the time," I said. I thought about it on planes and boardrooms during early morning walks in Chicago. I thought about it while setting up folding tables and rewriting brand pitches. If I hadn't stood up from that dinner table, if I hadn't walked out with my dignity instead of staying to explain myself one more time, I might still be shrinking myself to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. I might still be asking for approval from someone who had no intention of giving it. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner," he added. "You did what you knew how to do," I said, "and I did what I needed to do." We stopped at the corner, waiting for the light to change. The wind had picked up, rustling the trees above us. "I think we're better now," he said, "stronger." I looked over at him, then up at the buildings we'd walked past 100 times. He was right. We were. What changed everything wasn't confrontation. It wasn't even the apology. It was stepping away from the need to be seen a certain way. The strength didn't come from the article or the numbers or the titles. It came from choosing to walk out with my head high and from building a life that didn't require someone else's permission to feel real. Sometimes justice doesn't show up with noise. It comes in the quiet return when you walk back into your life fully as yourself, and the people who once doubted you finally have to see what's always been there. If you've ever had to walk away from someone who couldn't recognize your worth, I hope you know this. You don't have to explain yourself to be valid. You don't have to win anyone's approval to build something beautiful. And if this story spoke to something in you, I'd love to know. Feel free to share your story in the comments, or just take a moment to breathe and remember, your path is enough. Thanks for spending this time with me, and take good care.